Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of To the Edge. Today with me is the members for the cast and crew of the film Honky Holocaust, which is in the process of filming right now. And with me today is Maria Nadapov, the lead actress, Lucas Fleming, the producer, actor, director, Paul M. Michelarni, the producer, writer, and director, Alex E. Edwards, the producer, actor, and co-manager, and Seth Daly, the lead production assistant. So, in a nutshell, what can you tell us about the Honky Holocaust? Anyone can feel free to jump in.
Okay. Honky Holocaust is a film that we're all working on, a feature-length film. It's kind of like a throwback to 1970s exploitation films. Inspired mainly by like a lot of the Italian horror films and Western films, like spaghetti westerns, and also, just by society in general. And it's pretty cool.
So would you say it's more of a horror film?
It's not scary, but it's definitely in the horror genre only because it doesn't really fit anywhere else.
Well, I imagine that the Holocaust was pretty horrific, so.
It's horrific in terms of it horrifying people, but as far as being our film, the Holocaust reference is more of a homage to the film Cannibal Holocaust, which is a 1980 Italian film, and but no, it's not scary, so to speak, which is the only thing that really alienates it from a lot of other horror movies, but it's definitely graphic, gory, controversial. The list goes on.
Is it a period piece or does it take place in present day?
Mainly present day. There is an intro that would be considered period piece. It starts in like the 1960s, specifically with like Charles Manson and the macabre surrounding him, and then also the civil rights movement, which in our film history happens a little bit differently. They clash, and then it kind of fast forwards to present day.
Well, that reminds me of Watchmen, which was a bit of an alternate history.
That actually is the intro in Watchmen is similar to what we'll be doing in Honky Holocaust.
Oh, good. So, what can you all tell me about your contributions to Honky Holocaust?
Seth?
I'm a production assistant / key grip. Basically, I'm basically everyone else's assistants is basically what I do. I just do what I can, moving stuff, playing as extras, driving people places, doing errands, things like that. I'm also tell all the other PAs, which consist of nobody, what to do. So I do their jobs.
He's also the sexiest crew member we have.
I see. Sexy gopher, go for this, go for that.
Pretty much.
And
I am a producer, casting director, and I play the main villain in the film.
Flash rock star.
what can you tell us about the villain?
He's just, he's demented. He doesn't really know better anyway. He knows, all he knows is hate and ignorance and racism, and he doesn't know anything else. And he's so committed to that really there's no other way for him. He wants to destroy all the black people, take over power for the white race. He was in an underground bunker with Charles Manson for 30 years.
Wow.
So all he knows is whatever Charles Manson told him and embedded into his mind,
So he was basically brought up as a neo-Nazi.
Correct. I mean, he like met Charles Manson at a young age, basically. I mean, he wrote the whole thing, so he probably knows more detail than I, but he met him at a young age. He was probably lost, looking for something, you know what I mean? Didn't know where to go in life, and probably as the rest of the Manson family members were, they believed his teachings and got pulled into his psychotic, you know what I mean? And especially when he's isolated underground in a bunker, and that's all you know, and that's all you're being taught and told.
I see. And Maria, what can you tell us?
I play, I guess, the lead character. I play Charles Manson's daughter, and to add to what has already been discussed about the film, I would say that primarily the story is kind of about what if Charles Manson's race war actually came to fruition. And so on that note, my character goes from into a pretty major transformation from being naive and isolated and only being exposed to certain beliefs, obviously as Luke mentioned, which are pretty far from reality. When she finally separates from her family and goes above ground and gets exposed to real life very quickly and learns a lot of harsh lessons, she kind of goes in the complete opposite spectrum of where she started as far as character. So it's definitely really interesting for me to go through that whole character arc and really try to understand how she feels in all these different situations. I would also say, with regard to the horror genre, that this film definitely deals with, it kind of personifies everything that there is that could be the most horrific kind of imagining of society and people, and so it kind of focuses on those things which have happened in history and continue to happen to this day, and sort of exposes them for what it is. So from that standpoint, I think it's a really necessary and important project to be a part of. So I don't know if that
So is that like a realization that your character comes through gradually throughout the film?
with regard to these
Yeah,
horrific
with
truths.
regards
Yeah,
to the world
partly.
outside.
She definitely does, I think, at points in the story, becomes aware of these truths and really develops a large disdain for them. And because of her personal involvement and certain things that she experiences in different relationships that she also experiences throughout her story and her journey, yeah, it's really interesting how things unfold, and I want to leave it at that.
All right, and what can you tell us about your contributions?
I'm Black Team 4. Came up with names, so my character name is, can you guess? Alex E. Edwards. And basically, my character was actually just, I was in a group, a gang, I guess, with my friends. It was a group of us kind of going against the white folks in the film, Charles Manson's family gang. And I'm like, I guess I want to say I'm the leader or the cool guy in the crew, the one that says the most. And basically that's it. I have a great scene fighting with Luke, a great fighting scene. So definitely when y'all check that out, hopefully in this summer y'all can say who won. We did a little.
Well, we're rooting for you.
Root for both of us.
Okay.
Don't only root for me, but Honky Holocaust is not Alex.
No, in the movie we're rooting for you.
I don't know. I might could take you in real life. No, I'm joking.
Cut.
Place your bets.
That's for the
It's all
next
good.
episode.
Yeah.
All right, and what can you tell us about your contribution?
I wrote the script, and I'm also directing the film. I mean, I kind of as a director, without any budget and not paying anybody, and working day to day, trying to make ends meet on a constant basis. A lot of directing from my standpoint, is just filling in the empty spaces. Someone doesn't show up, I fill that empty space. In addition to making sure all the actors are on point and everything's on schedule. And I have, everyone that came here today are definitely on my good side as far as like heavy contributions and always willing to help out on time, especially this punctual guy. And with people like this helping out, it makes directing really, really not easy, but easier and less of a lethal undertaking.
I want to say these people are very punctual. They all showed up on the set even before I did, which amazed me.
That's rare
That's
for
pretty
us.
early. Yeah.
I'd like to say something about the horror genre.
Sure.
There's many things in this movie that are very horrifying. I think as a typical horror movie, it deals with more monsters and blood or just random killings. Like the whole idea that the Manson family has that's embedded in them by Charles Manson, and they've been basically like subjected to his preachings, is very horrifying. Their ideals, their beliefs, like the complete ignorance of it is very horrifying, and the things they do and the way they act, you know what I mean, and how ignorant it is very horrifying. So it definitely, in that way, is a horror movie.
I would also go on to say that if you were talking about monsters in a horror type film, you could argue that you and your hatred, your character you play, he is really the monster, and the hatred behind him is his like weapon, with also the blood and gore that is also provided.
He's the Darth Vader of neo-Nazis.
Wow.
I think with Honky Holocaust was definitely like a reflection of America.
What it could have been.
That's what's really in society right now.
Mhm.
That's what's really going on, and back then, we just
True.
showing it.
Right?
We just had the balls to actually show it.
Yes.
You know, it's you could say it's horrifying, or oh, you shouldn't watch it because of that. But just go outside and look around.
And
You
it's
see the
not
same
ju-
thing that we actually showing you.
It's
so.
not just back then either.
Exactly. I said
It's
back
today,
now,
it's
back then.
all
it's gonna
throughout
be tomorrow.
history.
It's gonna be next week.
Right, and it
Next
doesn't
year.
just deal with white and black people either, or just the
Deals with
Nazis.
people.
People in general,
Exactly.
hating on other people, other people that do things differently than they do, or speak differently, or act differently, or dress differently. Like, people hate on that. If you're different, you want to do different things,
If you don't
people
do
hate.
What the majority do of society is I
You're
feel
an
like
outcast.
I feel like the most important thing. Well, people are very scared to be themselves. Very scared to be themselves.
I would say the monsters in this film are fear, hatred, and ignorance, for sure. And that's, to me, scarier than any monster that one could make up, because those are real things that exist and within everybody and within every society, and definitely very prevalent today, as it has been, sadly, through a large part of our history. And that's really the thing that we need to fight and become cognizant of.
Well, that's interesting that this sounds like a really, really deep film. So, what aspects of society do you see in real life that you would equate with Honky Holocaust? What do you see out there that you see in the film? I mean, in details.
I would say blind hate. I mean, it's just like I've had if you just like watch people or how they talk, you just hear people saying something about somebody else. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a race or gender or whatever. Like, I've had people come into my work, and he was like trying to buy something, and he's like, yeah, I'd rather buy it from you than buy it from some like towel hat outside. And this guy like actually just came in and told this to me, and I'm like, you just said that like out loud? Like, you literally just said that? Like, it's just like he probably, I don't know if he has like a reason to dislike people, like other people, but he just said that like just to me, like not even like trying to think like that. It would be something ignorant in the society, and this whole blind hatred kind of shows in the movie on both sides, with the villain who blindly hates black people, and then in the same way when they go outside, a lot of the black people, they've just been treating white people like basically just terribly for the past, I don't know, like 30 years or whatever. They've just been considered like second-class citizens, like living in like ghettos and stuff like that. So I'd say blind hatred is one thing.
So it's, yeah.
Go ahead.
So I noticed a lot of black-white racism. What about problems with the Jewish?
I'll take this one. No, we had as the writer, I don't like to get too broad. You know what I mean? Too vague. I like to narrow things down and attack one thing at a time. I think you make more of a punch. I'm actually just finished writing another script called Bookworm Biker versus Demons from the Third Reich, about a Jewish woman who's left the her Jewish community, and then demon Nazis come out of the ground, and she ends up being the hero that fights all of them, with a demon motorcyclist who's not a Nazi. Anyway, that's in a nutshell. So, but yeah, our goal as a film production company is to entertain, but more than that, we want to. Like, I was actually thinking about this the other day. The world is a really screwed up place. It always will be.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that need changing. And I was wondering, I was like, what am I doing to change anything? You know what I mean? I'm not involved in politics. I sign online petitions, but I don't really go out and protest or anything. And then I was like, wait a minute, we're all making a feature film that fights racism head on. And that's kind of like, speaking of the horror genre, A lot of people hear the word horror and they think scary. You know, they think Exorcist, they think Friday the 13th.
Right.
And but what Luke was saying, and Maria and Seth were all saying, is that this is a horrifying film. It's not scary. You're not going to sit there and wonder who's going to come out from behind a door. On the flip side, you're going to wonder what we're going to show you next, because there, like I said, there's a lot of screwed up stuff going on out there, and like Trayvon Martin is a recent example.
Perfect example.
Exactly, and the way that society treats it is even worse than the act itself. Obviously, you know, what happened is unforgivable and should never happen anywhere. But the fact that people are used to this, there's already a protocol set up when there's racism that involves a murder. The fact that we already know how to deal with that. Some people say, "Oh, well, we're used to this. We can deal with it. We can treat it appropriately." We shouldn't know how to deal with that, because that shouldn't be happening in the first place. And it's complacency, I feel, is the number one villain, the number one monster in the world, let alone our film. So the only way I see fighting complacency is showing people what they are turning their backs on every day. You know, hiding behind their picket fences and behind their big screen TVs and in their nice cars and their nice lofty jobs. I'm ready to show them something. We're ready to show them something that's really gonna make them have nightmares, not because it's scary, but because it's extremely graphic. And beyond the sight, it's the idea that they realize all of a sudden, yeah, the civil rights movement's been going on for what, 50 years now?
At least.
At least. I mean, since the 60s.
Well, really 1955 with Rosa Parks.
Right. I would even say like the 1860s with the Civil War would be the beginning of it. But
well, after that, you had like a plateau from the
Exactly.
1877 to about 1955, where
Right.
nothing happened.
Exactly. So the contemporary civil rights movement is going on for 50 years.
Right.
And if we are, as many people say, the most intelligent species on the planet, why the hell can't we get along with each other? You know what I mean? Why can't we get 50 years of progress get anywhere beyond Trayvon Martin and other tragedies like that? The fighting between you know, Muslims and Jewish people in the Middle East, and Catholics and Protestants in Ireland, all over the world. There's genocide, there's hatred, and there's all this racism and fear and and it's complacency that allows it to keep happening. And it's because nobody wants to leave behind their wet picket fence. They want to stand there, fill out their ballots, say, "Oh, I'm voting for the right person," and then hope that they do better, and they never do, and they're always mad. And I think it's because people aren't showing them what they know is out there, but they're fine living their 65 to 100-year lives, knowing that they didn't do too much wrong, but they didn't do anything really profound and right. So I say, let's show them what's going on out there, you know, a little bit blown out of proportion because we want to entertain at the same time.
Right.
And let's see if it wakes some people up. And if it doesn't, then we'll make another one, and another one, and another one. And then we'll die one day, and we'll say, well, at least we tried.
Well, somehow you have to go bigger in order for people to get the message, because sometimes it falls on deaf ears. And I think that film is a very powerful way to actually communicate a message. If you're running for office or something like that, then you just end up becoming a cog in the wheel. Look at the Congress, nothing gets done. Look at the other politicians. They have the best intentions, but they get bought out by special interest groups, and they have to represent different parties, and they have to compromise. Then they compromise themselves into doing nothing, and it's stuck with the status quo. So a film is actually a much more effective means to communicate a message, or any form of medium.
Plus, if it's offensive, which it is, with a good message, but it's going to be extremely offensive, it already is, it's going to open people's eyes. And they can talk all the, you know, smack they want. They can say these are like sociopathic, horrible people, like they're all villains, they're monsters, they want to destroy society.
It's true.
Talk to any of us one-on-one, we're actually pretty chill. But when it comes time to show people what we are feeling and what we see around us, we're not going to hold back. If we were, I wouldn't be making movies. I'd be doing something else that I could express myself honestly with. And as far as going above and beyond, there's the entertainment aspect. And then there's the, I don't remember what it's called, but you know, when you shoot an arrow at a bullseye, you never aim right at the bullseye, you aim a little bit higher. So if I wanted to shoot Seth in the face with an arrow, I'd aim right above his head. So we're going above and beyond, so that hopefully people will come just to where we are, if not a little bit further back. And maybe that's the medium we're all looking for. But we want to say, we want to scare people. You know, not like coming up from behind a door and woo. We want to scare people and say, wow, is this really what people are feeling? You know what I mean? Is this what our next generation looks like? This is how they view society, this murder and this genocide and this racism. This is how they look at the world?
Another day at the office, another day in the newscast.
Exactly,
The
yeah.
monsters that he mentioned from other horror films, I don't know if it was Freddy or Jason or whatever, they show you these monsters that are hypothetical. They don't really exist. We're showing you a monster that exists every day in everyday life for everyone, and everybody ignores. They don't address it. They pretend it doesn't exist. This is a monster that's real in a horror film. You know what I mean? And not only the movie are we showing people that, but it's the production as well. Like the way these people, we have all actors working for free. They come together from all walks of life.
Top
Conservative people, yeah, like Maria, all different ages, different music, like people that you would never think would sit in the same room together, come to the studio, 40, 50 at a time, all talking, hanging out, like enjoying each other's different views, different
Networking.
ideas, and like, you know, realizing
Respecting and
not only is
appreciating each other.
not only is the movie showing that, but the whole production shows that and opens people's eyes to like different genres of everything.
So it's like when we offset is actually the opposite. We actually judge each other on character.
Yes.
On set, we don't judge each other on character. We hate you because who you are, point blank, as in your color, the color of your skin. I guess I want to say
With this
On
script.
screen.
on
with
screen,
this
yeah,
project.
On screen, we hate each other.
There's none of that. Yeah, there's the icebreakers right there. You know what I mean? No one's walking into the room and saying, "Oh my God, it's a white guy," or "Oh my God, it's a black guy." We're making a movie called Honky Holocaust. The fact that someone walks in, the color of their skin is irrelevant by the time they've even accepted the invitation to be part of Honky Holocaust.
I mean,
And you know, it's funny, when I was first coming up with the idea for this script, I was talking to someone else who was working on a web series with me, and I told her the idea, and she said, "You got to be really, really careful with that idea. Like, that is dangerous." And I said, "Whatever, I'm ready for it." And it's funny because I grew up in a relatively predominantly white neighborhood, and now I have more black friends than I ever did my whole life. And people like this couldn't be happier. So who would have known that making a extraordinarily like race driven film, you know, about racism and about bigotry would actually erase the idea of bigotry and racism from our community that we developed from the forefront.
See, that's already contributing to social progress right there.
Exactly, yeah. We're starting small.
I have to say that's a much more effective means of producing a film and telling a story than a lot of other big blockbuster films like the comic book movies. They have this big bad villain who can be defeated within the span of 2 hours, and that's not the way the world works, and I think a lot of people are afraid to see who they really have to fight and what it takes to really do that.
a lot of people have to fight themselves.
Yeah.
The majority, at least.
Amen.
They
Get
don't
to
wanna
look
fight
in the
their-
mirror.
Exactly. They don't want to go. They don't want to go to war with themselves. They already
Nice.
scared to be themselves. You know?
Nice
so-
thing for me too with this project is that, you know, it doesn't really wrap it all up with a nice bow, and it doesn't necessarily project answers. It raises a lot of questions, and I feel like it really does leave it up to the viewers to say, you know, the power is in your hands. Now that you know, it's up to you what you're going to do with that information and how you're going to handle it, and it's up to you to contribute to solving these problems.
That's a good point to make, because I noticed that a lot of people, they know that they have a problem, but they don't know what the end result is, what their end game is, so they can't plan for a strategy to achieve that result. So they're permanently stuck somewhere. They're like, woe is me, or I don't know what's going on, so I'm just going to hate.
Kind of like a Smokey the Bear syndrome, only you can stop forest fires. It's kind of the same idea, only you can stop racism.
And if everyone agrees to stop it, then you have no more racism. But I will say there's been quite a bit of social progress. I can't imagine someone like Barack Obama being president even 20 years ago. I remember in the 90s they called Bill Clinton the first black president. I was like, that's ridiculous.
I never heard
Why?
that, but that's funny.
Because he was cool.
Right.
Like, he's not black, he's white.
Inhale.
Yeah, basically saying black people's cool. I'm saying.
Or on the other end, it can be like, oh, black people.
Dude, what are you saying? White people aren't cool? Yo.
This is
Bill
racist,
Clinton-
man.
we all could agree that Bill Clinton was a great president, correct?
Yes.
I agree.
And
Correct?
he was cool.
He was so good, y'all thought he was black.
Hey, treat us well.
Ain't treated
What
not
does
real.
that say?
Oh, that he paid good.
Bill Clinton is Bill Clinton. That's where I'd leave it.
Hey,
He was his own
Bill
race.
never
Clinton's a human
forget him.
being. We'll leave it at that.
true.
never forget Bill.
You know, I feel bad for Al Gore having to follow that.
Al Gore.
Yeah, he invented the internet.
Excuse me?
He invented the internet. No one's ever heard that joke. No.
I've heard that. I've heard that joke.
But he, like, there's something where he supposedly claimed to have made the internet. And clearly didn't.
Yeah, but the internet has actually been around since the 1960s. Yeah. But that's way off topic. Getting back to Honky Holocaust. What made you decide?
Everyone was lost.
Yeah. What made you decide to call the film Honky Holocaust?
I wanted to really shock people into seeing it, or getting involved with it, or reading about it, or being aware of it. Period.
Or just talk about it.
Yeah.
The name
just talk
stands
about
out
it.
definitely.
Yeah. I originally called the script Albicide, which is just the killing of whites.
Honky Holocaust is a much better name.
Then I evolved to White Genocide, and that one didn't really stick. And then the art director, Thomas, and I were driving around one day, and he was like, we got to come up with a better title. So we started like listing off all the words we could think of, and the film Cannibal Holocaust is one of my favorite
Cannibal
films.
Holocaust.
It's awesome. And so he said, what about Honky Holocaust? Because honky is a slur for whites, and Holocaust is an homage to Cannibal Holocaust. Honky Holocaust.
You know what else it reminds me of?
Voila.
You white honky. That reminds me of blaxploitation films from
Oh.
the 1970s, which you mentioned earlier.
Yes, there is a lot of homages to the blaxploitation films.
Well, it's good to know you're not an L7. Everyone got that.
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorite films from the 70s was Shaft.
Oh, Shaft is great.
Love that film. Couldn't get into Shaft's big score, though. Shaft in Africa was kind of fun, but it's not on the same level as the first two.
I've been watching a lot of Sonny Chiba movies lately. I think we might have a kung fu movie in our future.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Have you seen?
Can I be a fighter?
Yeah.
Dude, you're going
Dude,
down.
can I be a ninja?
Kung Fu fighting.
Right?
Have you seen Black Dynamite?
I
Yes.
haven't. It's been playing
Just
recently.
recently,
I've been
It's a
wanting to
great
see it.
film, isn't it?
Awesome movie.
You have to see it. It's a
I will.
parody.
Yeah.
I was going to
Blaxploitation
see it
film.
last weekend actually, but I had work the next morning and didn't play till midnight. But it's on my top of my list to see.
It is so well done. My uncle actually thought it came out in the 70s.
Really?
Yeah. All right, well, that's all the time that we have for this particular episode. Thank you for coming on to discuss the Honky Holocaust, and we should have you on again soon, like real soon.
I might wear the same thing.
Yeah, me too.
These are my only clothes.
Let's all wear the same thing.
This is my only
We should be
code.
on next week. Let's just all wear the same
Who
thing.
wants to vote to wear the same thing?
Every
All in favor?
television
Aye.
appearance,
We wear
we
the
wear the
same
same thing.
All right, good night, folks.
Night, everybody.
Take care.